Welcome back, my little dysfunctional family, to
What to Watch Now,
where we talk about what's streaming on Netflix right now. And in today's episode, we are talking about The Umbrella Academy. It is so fucking good. I am just raging for a season 2. I am now a diehard fan. It is that good. It is so good. And it was actually originally a graphic novel that was created by Gerard Way. And Gerard, by the way, if you don't know who Gerard Way is, he is the lead singer of My Chemical Romance. I know, a man of many talents. I was kind of surprised because telling stories, especially if you want to make them interesting and complex and write in a casual, believable way, I mean, it's really a skill, and damn does he have it. It's a really good story, because this is like super weird and science fiction-y, and I'm for that type of shit. I'm all for it, but he somehow grounded the whole thing in reality, and, well, I'll just say it again, that takes mad skill, so yay, go Gerard Way and the Umbrella Academy existing. So, love this show. If I were to pitch it to you, it's like the Royal Tenenbaums family, like all dysfunctional and lovable, but with superpowers. It's kind of very much like Watchmen in the sense of the ramifications of long-term use with superpowers in a realistic setting. You know, eventually everyone loves you, and then maybe everyone hates you. Except this is more like personal problems, but we'll talk about that. Now, we're going to go over, I'm going to introduce to you who the characters are. We're going to talk about the premise, the plot, the ending, and how I think all of this could have been fixed. But before we go into that, I just want to say, I fucking ruined this for myself. This is just like a minor thing. Just gonna put this out there. I made the mistake of, I like to go into things with a bit of knowledge. I love knowing comparisons. I don't need to know everything about the graphic novel in comparison to what they ended up depicting in the TV series. But it's fun to have, like, some of it was useful, but I learned just one pinnacle key point of what would probably lead to the ending that I was like, damn, I wish I hadn't known. It would have been more fun to be surprised in that way. So, like, that's just my little grievances with myself. But the great thing is, even having already foreseen what was going to happen because I knew a little bit of a big spoiler, it was still that good that the journey up to it still was like, I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I had a really fun time watching it. So that's what I'm saying is, it was that good. Knowing that type of spoiler isn't going to ruin it for you at all. Okay. Oh, also, I have a Twitter and an email in the description below. You're welcome to go follow me and chat it up. I want to know your opinions on the case because this is so fucking good. I want, like, all the theories. I want all the scientific information on it. Please send it to me. Let's chat about it. So, the premise. On October 1st, 1989, 43 women were pregnant, 43 women gave birth. But what's different about these 43 women compared to everybody else? They did not start the day pregnant. They just, out of nowhere, just totally regular people. I don't even know if any of them had sex. I think it's implied in the beginning of that one girl was just innocently kind of interested in another boy and gave him a kiss. But she just got pregnant in an instant and then had a baby. It was wild. And this extravagant billionaire, inventor, all this stuff, Sir Reginald Hargreaves, decides to adopt the children he could find. And in the comic book, they imply that some didn't actually make it for whatever reason. So he ends up adopting 7 of them. He then grooms them into being superheroes. And we are then fast-forwarded into life of, decades later, showing how they're all fucked up because of it. They are no longer superheroes in that way. And their life is not for the better, and they are all regrouping for the first time. Some of them haven't talked to each other in, 12 years because their father, aka their adopted father, Sir Reginald Hargreaves, has died. That's a general premise of, what we're starting out with. Now, I just want to refresh you on the characters, so as I'm talking about this, it doesn't get confusing because there are so many characters. So, of the children, there is number 1, or Luther, played by Tom Hopper. Number 2, Luther, I gotta say powers too. Luther's very strong and fast or something. I think he's just very strong and smart or whatever. He ends up, well, we'll get into his second form of power afterwards. Number 2, that's Diego, played by David Castaneda. And he is able to make anything curve when he throws it. He has like great accuracy, and his favorite thing is knives, so it makes him extra deadly using that. Number 3 is Allison, played by Emmy Raver Lampman? Sorry, Emmy, if I'm ruining your name. I butcher up names so much on this podcast. Allison is able to create rumors that instantly become true and believable. So it's almost like a form of, it's funny that it's a rumor when in reality, it's just basically she can get anyone to do what she wants and be able to be very controlling because she can make a wish and make it true basically through the influence of people. Number 4 is Klaus, played by, oh, I love this guy. I used to love watching Misfits, so I was like, oh my gosh, it's Robert Sheehan. He's awesome. Klaus has the ability to talk to the dead. Number 5 is played by, and by the way, this kid is like my new Jason Schwartzman. I still love Jason Schwartzman, but like the way, when I first started watching Jason Schwartzman in like Rushmore and other movies, he was just very iconic. He was just so skilled, so young. This kid is next fucking level. His name is Aidan Gallagher, if I'm saying his name correctly. He liked one of my tweets too. Woo! That was pretty cool and fun. Number 5, they're all great actors, but Aidan in particular, if you were to watch this series, you have to watch it for specifically him. He's crazy amazing. He has the ability to kind of like push through portions of space and time, and initially it's just kind of like he can appear and materialize in different areas and pop up and reappear, but he is eventually able to push through like wormholes and go through time, which kind of like fucks his life up, basically. Then number 6, Ben, who's played by Justin H. Min, which, by the way, I was offended when I was like at Wikipedia, they refer to him as a side character. I'm like, fuck you. Ben was there plenty. I consider him a main character. Ben, you're a main character to me. Or Justin. They don't go into this specifically, they just kind of show it, but Ben had the ability to open up his body, and this is so weird and gross. Like his stomach can open up to another dimension where there's monsters, and he basically can use the monsters to, thrash people about and murder them pretty badly. And then number 7, Vanya, who's played by Ellen Page, and Vanya, surprisingly, out of all these kids, just has no super ability. She's just a kid who was born under magical circumstances, but she's just ordinary, and they do not let her forget that. So going forward, what these kids were like back in the day. This dad was the worst dad ever. He was super hard on them. There was tons of rules. It was very strict. There was just, it was so bad to the point that like there was scheduled fun time between a limited like 1 hour point of the entire week. It was bad. And these kids were trained to think and understand, like, so even if, like, let's say Klaus could only talk to the dead and that was his ability, he was still expected to train in martial arts and have the ability to punch and kick back and think just as, be able to solve any problem just as anyone else. So he really took their superpowers and themselves to the next level, which I think is great because, like, in any, like, supernatural universe, there's always the possibility you could lose your powers, or you have to be able to be good at seeing the situation from any perspective to better solve it. You get what I'm saying? So he trained them really hard, way too hard to be a kids. And then when I think they were, like, I don't know, like 10 probably or 12, he kind of premiered them at this bank heist. We got to, by the way, this show does not skimp on lots of superpower showing stuff. You're going to really enjoy how fun it is to see them use it. One of my favorite things that I enjoy, especially with like X-Men, one of my favorite parts of the movies are when people are just kind of like bickering and talking to each other, but they're casually using their powers in that setting. So fun. I love that shit. Well, we get to see what they were like and how they were all together. We get to also get to see some of them being kind of reluctant about, even being involved with all of it. All the while, Sir Reginald Hargreaves is watching from a distance, with poor little Vanya being constantly reminded, like, why can't I be, why can't I go help them? And he's like, because you're ordinary. And it's like, damn, cold, poor Vanya. And as they are groomed and everyone's so happy to have these super powered kids go help in different weird circumstances in these cute little uniforms and these little simple masks, the reality is it doesn't end up working out that way in the long term. Some big major points that end up dividing them up is, unfortunately, Ben dies. I can't remember if Ben dies before or after. I think he dies after. But Ben dies at some point, which basically, obviously, that really upsets most of the group. I think right before that, though, when they were like 13, number 5 just disappeared. And they did assume he was lost somewhere in time because he basically had a fight with his dad and he wanted to go through time, but his dad basically was like, listen, time is messed up and really complex. You could go through one, rip in time and come out as an acorn. He implied, it can mess with your mind or the way you look. I mean, you might not come out as yourself at all, aka the acorn comment. So, I mean, he made a good point, but he was so rigid and strict with him. This kid who felt like he did it, like Aidan, or not Aidan, that's the person playing with him. Number 5 is just so unbelievably intelligent, even as like a young kid, that like he's looked into it. He's like, I have some awareness. I can do it. You have to let me practice. But I get it. It's like incredibly dangerous. And he honestly ends up being right because when Aidan goes forward in time, he ends up being unable to go back in time. So that's why to everyone else, he technically is just mysteriously gone. They don't know where he is. It's basically it's pretty scary. You feel bad for him and the circumstance. So over time, this leads to more and more of them falling apart, getting away from the group, not wanting to be involved. And it's so sad because at one point, the only person left is Luther. And that does not go well for him. I think when we see them in the future, so we're fast forward to the future, number 1, Luther is got this crazy, unusual body shape. All of his siblings comment on how big he's gotten. He's living on the moon, but of course he comes down when he hears his dad dies. There's Diego, who is still so obsessed with the idea of superheroes and the idea of helping people who need help, but he's kind of living a bit of a sad life. Like, he's living in the back of like a boxing room. He's not making any money. He's kind of really hung up on something. Even someone he previously dated who was a detective is like, stop. Like, you're getting in the way, but I still care about you, that whole jazz. Which, by the way, like, I don't mean to sound heartless, but that whole love story between Patch and Diego was fine. It didn't make me mad that it was there, but I just didn't give a shit. Like, it was so funny. Like, so she died, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, she died. Sorry, girl. But then later in life, they were like, for Patch, and I was like, who's Patch? Like, I totally had forgotten at that point, and I was watching it all in one go. But Diego's, still kind of hung up on a dream, but very feisty and doesn't get along well with his brother Luther. Number 3, Allison is very famous, but she's suffering from the consequences because she used her rumor abilities to give her, all the acting gigs and things she wanted, and that worked out well for her. But then the problem was, later in life, she started to, this is really unfortunate, she gave in to the temptation and started to use it on her daughter. Not that I'm trying to, like, stand up for her or anything, but she wasn't trying to use it for anything but innocently, like, trying to get her to go to bed when her daughter was, like, having tantrums and stuff like that. and it just became too tempting. But like obviously that's wrong to use it on people you love and try to control them, and the husband saw this, and basically they ended up getting divorced, and he got full custody of his daughter, and she feels awful because not only does she miss her daughter, but she's very regretful of what she's done. And she, most of the time, she doesn't even use her "I heard a rumor" thing at all, because, which I do admire about her character, and we'll get into that later. Then there's I'm so sorry, I'm trying to go down the list to whatever. Klaus, who's just a full-on drug addict, understandably, because while he always seems wild and goofy and crazy, and honestly, he's like the OG, like, what's his name? Captain whatever Sparrow, what the guy from Pirates of the Caribbean that Johnny Depp plays. To me, he's the best at playing a lovable, quirky type of disheveled guy. Klaus hears the dead, and it gets bad and scary. You can understand why he just didn't want to explore his power anymore, and he just needs to keep it at bay. He even sees his brother Ben, who number 6, who's died. He still sees him, which is so unfortunate. Vanya, number 7, lives all by herself in a jankety little apartment. Again, a beautiful apartment, but it's supposed to be jankety, and she's very poor. She wrote a novel at one point about her other siblings, so it made all of them hate her. And so when she shows up to her dad's funeral, it's like a really big deal. They're all like, get the hell out of here. And she just plays violin. She's even like third chair violin. She's not even the best at that. She's completely just constantly made to feel ordinary and like nothing. And then the big one is number 5. So number 5's got a crazy interesting past. So in 2019, their dad dies and they meet up for the first time. And I refreshed your memory of like what they're all going through at that time. The rest of the series focuses on a bunch of different situations that expand over the 10 episodes, but they beautifully intertwine with each other. And I think they did a really good job making it not feel redundant or like, haven't we had this conversation before? So when they're at the funeral, fucking number 5 shows up. At one point, Vanya even is talking to Pogo, who, by the way, Pogo, the intelligent chimpanzee, I was like, look, it's Pogo, the more accomplished Mr. Bubbles. Do you remember Michael Jackson's pet monkey Bubbles? So anyways, she's talking to Pogo, and she even says that she was so heartbroken that number 5 left. She used to leave him like his favorite snack of peanut butter and marshmallow sandwiches out every night and left the light on because she was so afraid he'd come back, see the lights were off, get confused, and leave again. And all of them are heartbroken about the they, even to the end, even their differences, they're still very close and give a shit about each other. And by pure coincidence, they see this time hole warp up, and you see a figure you can't quite make out. It kind of looks like an old guy, but what ends up coming through is number 5. But even crazier is all of the other people, I don't remember how old they're supposed to be. I'm assuming they're supposed to be probably like in their 30s, like young 30s. They are supposed to all be the same age because they're born on the same hour, same day, everything like that. And here's number 5. He's 13 again. But he has the mind, get this, of a 58-year-old. Yes, he's now technically older than them. But he's trapped in his young guy's body. That's why I could not get over. It never got less lovable for me to watch Aidan act. He was amazing. He had that weird connection with the mannequin. Oh my god. Okay, so he talks about not being alone during the apocalypse. And he says a woman named Dolores, but we end up learning Dolores is a mannequin. I was like, boy, what were you and Dolores doing? But he, the point is, he, to me, as an actor, captured this older guy, this older cranky guy in a kid's body so well. And it never got less boring to see him do cool trick shot moves as like a kid. I don't know why that's always so cool to see someone who you don't anticipate to be really skilled. Anyway, he just does an amazing job, and he never gets any less fun to watch. And also, I personally loved his power, so it was fun seeing him like pop up in different areas when he's like fighting with his brothers and sisters. But anyways, he returns. He's just kind of unbothered, and they're all like, hello, we've been like, our lives have been ruined missing you and various other circumstances. You seem unaffected. And he ends up telling privately Vanya about this apocalypse and that From what he saw and he experienced from moving forward, he saw from a newspaper the apocalypse is going to happen, and based on the time he came back, they only have 8 days. So this whole series takes place over 8 days. And he explains that when he was out there, he basically ended up accidentally arriving. He was all by himself. He was the only human left on Earth. And he lived for decades, from 13 to 58, all by himself. It was devastating. Obviously extremely lonely, probably drove him a little bit insane, which is why it blows my mind that even when he comes back, he's not really like bothered by making friends or being, spending valuable time with his, siblings. He's only focused on the fact, he's been driven insane. At one point they talk about the idea of obsession, and that like his brother Klaus, who's, an addict and is aware of the signs, is like, you're an addict. You're an addict for the apocalypse, which by the way, Klaus is like so fucking funny with this. Like at one point he's just dancing with his father's urn with a joint to I Think We're Alone Now. There's so many iconic moments with Klaus. I loved him. Unfortunately, though, for number 5, Vanya thinks that maybe he's just like a little bit nuts and doesn't fully believe him. At first she does, and then she thinks he's lying, and he lets her think like, yeah, you're right, maybe I am crazy. But he's not. He's very addicted to this. This is all he's been focused on. He's happy to see his siblings, but honestly, at the end of the day, as far as he's concerned, there's not going to be any siblings to miss or spend time with as long as the apocalypse is happening. And he's in all that time, all he has evidence-wise is an eyeball he found in his dead siblings' hands. That's right. He's seen his siblings die already. So as far as he's concerned, he's so focused on the grief of what he's already experienced in one timeline that he can't even fully appreciate being with them now in this timeline. So that's a situation going on throughout the series. And pretty much nobody believes him or knows the apocalypse is really happening until 3 days before it's going on. So he's kind of going on his own private escapades. He's not checking in with his siblings. But to be fair, that's how like lovable dysfunctional they are. Like they're all willing to help each other, but none of them communicate with each other or update one another. And to be fair, like they haven't spent time with each other in like 12, 20 years, something like that, in such a long time period that it makes sense they would not be like, well, why am I updating you now? I've lived my life with you this long without you. So that's the big one, is the apocalypse is going to happen, but they don't even get band together to help number 5 until it's kind of too late, so to speak. Because he was like, no one was fucking believing me then, so... and I was trying to do research, but, one thing leads to the next of kind of ambushing his situation. Because it's like a whole timeline thing going on. Simultaneously, we have Luther and sometimes other people thinking that potentially... the dad's death was not an accident. Even though it seems like he's an older guy, he just had a heart attack, that was it. They even look at cameras that Allison saw of security footage and saw that he was becoming paranoid towards the end, and that the mom, who I loved that he was dad and their mom was like a robot, so fun. They treated her with such respect. I loved Mom. But Mom would have normally responded in some sort of stress, and the fact that she just sits there and kind of walks away is very out of the ordinary for her. In fact, she's acting so weird and seeming to have relapses in time. They think it's potential that she even snapped and became angry because they're always going back in the TV series of reminding you that this dad was not a nice guy. He had this robot. He treated her the worst out of anyone. He wouldn't even let her leave the grounds. And that being the case, maybe she snapped. She couldn't take it anymore. Allison even has like this moment of empathy. There's a lot of great moments of empathy, but Allison is like, all her kids left. Like there's never a question of like, is this robot have feelings? It's like, it's completely like, maybe she snapped. She missed us. We left her all alone. We abandoned her. And they think that they're not even like mad at Mom if she killed Dad or happy about it. They're just more understanding of it. So there's even a discussion at one point of, should we turn her down? Is she the cause of it? Because there's still a back and forth conversation of like, did he really die on his own? Did he not? By the way, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but this is like a fun little like comic booky thing. When he was numbering the kids, he numbered them in order of their importance to him, which is like fucked up. And also, considering the powers I told you, I thought it was weird the people he would have named to be more important. Like, no offense to Diego, but like, cool, you can curve knives. I don't know, having a monster come out of your stomach seems a lot more, from another dimension, seems a lot more interesting and important. I mean, even like, it makes sense that Allison was so high up with her rumors and being able to control people and anything so easily. But that's not the case in the TV series. I just thought that was like an interesting little tidbit to mention. But Allison. Allison has like a couple different timelines that are happening during this point that are really important. We've got herself, Allison, and Luther, and we also have her relationship with her sister Vanya. So, Luther and Allison, I'm happy they were very connected to each other. Honestly, I don't know what took so long. I mean, it was kind of sad that, like, I mean, listen, I'm just gonna put this out there. It's not sad at all if you're a virgin, that's fine. But man, were a lot of these superheroes virgins. And one of them being the case was Luther. It's implied that he didn't even get with anyone until his crazy rave night because of him just being so drawn and attached to Allison. And he didn't even hate or have any negative opinions about her because she went on and married someone else and had a kid with someone else. Like, there was no animosity. He really just genuinely loved her. And she clearly always loved him. It makes you wonder why they separated, but you get it. Like, they had too much, like, I think there was, like, somewhere in their psyche, they kind of followed their dad's rules of not being able to be with each other, which, by the way, they're not blood related. It's completely okay. But I don't know, if you're like adopted siblings, it gets kind of weird and sticky territory. I mean, like, what's the difference between not being blood related when, like, you guys have known each other since birth? It gets pretty weird in that circumstance, but that's okay. I was fine with their relationship, but honest to God, they are the Jack and Kate of the fucking group. In the end, I ended up really liking Allison and enjoying her. She would normally be a character I would be like, I fucking hate Allison, I'm done with her, get rid of her from the group. But no, she really had a lot of great ideas and towards the end had a better perspective on the serious situation. But the way her and him were very much like Jack and Kate from Lost, where they kind of just like, we're the leaders of the group and we're important and you have to run everything through us. And if we say no, no. It's like, all right, holier than thou. I know number one thinks he's the leader of the group, but in reality, that's just something him and his father decided. Everyone has their own opinions. They're totally allowed to vote as a group. And everyone else agrees that it's a democracy, as well as, like, it's okay to go, go deal with whatever personal shit you need to deal with. So they were kind of really annoying and self-important sometimes. Honestly, I mean, I'm happy they, like, ended up together or they wanted to end up together, but, like, Christ, I couldn't give a shit whenever they were together and having a romantic moment. I was like, yeah, whatever. Let's go back to the superpowers. Oh, by the way, forgot to mention this. This is like a side thing. This isn't a whole like thing focused on in the series. I just thought I'd mention this. But Luther has such a tragic situation because and Allison is like his only hope and person he connects to, so thank God she liked him back. But he was the last person to stick by his dad's side to the end. And at some point, he was doing a mission for his dad by himself, and it went wrong, and he was potentially going to die. So the way his dad saved him was he put his head on a gorilla's body, which is why he's literally, like, when he takes off his shirt, he's got a gorilla's body under there. It's hairy. It's a totally different color than he is. It's insane. And Allison was never turned off by that, which I'm like, that's scary to have sex with. I'm just saying that. But he dealt with that, and then the way his dad repays him is sending him to the moon, and the dad never opens up any of the, like, he's asking for daily reports, and he only did it to make his son feel important. That's a big reveal. Luther breaks down and is like, fuck my dad. Fuck all of this shit. Are you kidding me? It's really devastating to see that. Like, I did, as much as Luther got on my nerves, I did really feel bad that, like, he tried to do the right thing up to the end. He was the ideal, adopted superhero son, and he kind of got, like, fucked over. But, I mean, that shows, like, what an asshole their dad was to the very end. So we got Luther and Allison, but going back to the whole Allison arc, her relationship with Vanya was pivotal. She proved kind of the bullshit Vanya had to go through, and we're going to get into Vanya. Honestly, Vanya is told she's ordinary her whole life, excluded from everything, and forced to take drugs to control her temperament. But she didn't seem like a very mad person, but then again, you never know how people emotionally react when they're not on meds. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm seeing someone who has effective meds. But either way, it's caused her to, like, really alienate herself. But even after the book came out with all the truths and everything, and even after all her disappointments and her sad little life and always wanting to keep people distant, her sister really didn't like a lot. It's funny, the group goes back and forth of talking down to her, but they do genuinely care about her and want to make sure she's not in a bad, difficult situation. Even after all these years, they do give a shit, which was really nice and refreshing. And Allison kind of has this great, like, back and forth relationship with her that made sense to me. On one hand, she wants to be her sister, but weirdly her big sister, and I agree with Ellen Page's character Vanya, like, just being like, bitch, we the same age. Stop trying to, like, control me and tell me what's right. But honestly, Vanya's so gentle and sweet and loving. As Klaus said, she one time cried when we stepped on ants, that she's willing to forgive her sister. And it doesn't feel like she's being weak. It just feels like she just wants to, at the end of the day, have that connection she did genuinely have with her siblings. It's just they keep fucking it up because Vanya goes from someone who's like a really good sister to her and like wanting to like not butter her up to get anything out of her, just genuinely wants to connect with her sister, you know, brings her a coffee, that type of thing. But then at the same time, just like on a like every time she like Allison, I will give her credit, kept apologizing, and it felt like she meant it, but she would go from apologizing for a mistake or talking to Vanya a certain way, and then basically be like, you need to leave, you're a liability, you're ordinary. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you not see the up and down emotional roller coaster that was probably her every second of her everyday living in that fucking house? You can understand her frustration, how it's quietly building up, but the interesting thing is, it's not building up. Even after all those years, God knows Vanya at this point is probably like 30 or 28, however old these characters are supposed to be, and she's still not mad at her siblings. She just feels sad that she's not gotten to live the life she's wanted to live. Now, piggybacking off of the Vanya and Allison relationship. Now, remember, everything I'm mentioning up to this point, like the dad's questionable death, number 5 in the apocalypse, this is all crazily intertwined very well. It never feels like, as much as I felt the number 5 apocalypse idea was the most interesting, I never felt like I was experiencing filler. And guess what? You really weren't. So Vanya one day has a lesson with this guy. His name's Leonard Peabody, and he just takes an interest in her. But I gotta tell you, red fucking flags. When she meets him once, he's trying to go out on a date with her. He seems very gentle, just trying to be a friendly, nice guy, but she's very much, you know, he was a little too like, and my dad was really bad to me too, and I'm like, I'm already very confused. I mean, Vanya's a pretty well-known person, Vanya. You think you would have some red flags knowing someone could most likely look you up and be able to easily relate to you and so obviously point out similar difficulties you voiced publicly in a book. You know what I mean? But the part that really made me go, I don't know about Leonard, was when she goes by to see him and basically be like, I think I will take you up on that date, that dinner. He gives her a tiny wooden figure with like a violin, like playing a violin, obviously mimicking her, and be like, I stayed up all night doing it. I'm like, dude, we met once. Serial killer. And guess what? I'm not wrong. I mean, not technically serial killer, but definitely a murderer. So Leonard, over time, starts dating Vanya, and they become very close. He's there, he's very much protective of her, ready to talk shit about her family with her, especially whenever she airs her grievances. But in the very beginning, we get red flags as an audience because she doesn't know this, but he took her medication and dumped it out. So she's no longer medicated the rest of the series. But she's been medicated her whole life since she was like a little kid. And so she's feeling great. Suddenly, the first chair for her place that she's performing at opens up. She auditions. She does well. Everything's going her way. But to top it all off, amongst all this crazy emotional distress she's going over from the last couple days, because remember, this is a couple days Leonard and her have been dating, and her dad just died, and she's suddenly reconnecting with her siblings, and she's thrown through a whirlwind of past, upsetting bullshit that you're like, it's that upsetting thing where it's like, no matter how old I get and how far away I get from this, I come back here and you throw me right back in to something that I've grown out of, but you're still putting me in that situation and that dilemma. So you can understand her emotions and her frustration and wanting to attach so deeply to this guy. But she, for the most part, seems like she has a level head on her shoulders, and seems like she's good at setting boundaries for herself. But she's taking a huge risk, per her sister's advice, and trying to connect with someone. But her sister Allison feels something is wrong, and when she tries to intervene, I'm like, girl, come on, Vanya. It's red flags from the beginning. But I get it from her perspective and her frustration with her sister not wanting her to have happiness and so on and so forth. But basically, Vanya gets mad at Allison, is like, you're just trying to keep me from having my happiness. Little did we know that as she goes further on, this girl who seems so ordinary, turns out she fucking has powers. It's crazy. She one day is expressing how mad she is at her siblings after Leonard has fucking just taken one of the action figures from their home after a fight with her and her family. Already like, what the hell? And we see that she has powers. I mean, it's crazy. She's able to jingle all these cars around and lampposts, and she seems quite powerful doing literally nothing. In fact, this isn't clearly explained, but when she auditions with her violin, she thinks she played really well, and she did, but whatever she projected out of her ability-wise, it seemed to almost capture people, so there's like an element of being able to control people, kind of the way our girl Allison can with Rumors. That never got fully explored. I'd kind of love to know what the situation is with that. But anyway, she ends up discovering her powers and learning to deal with them and control with them with Leonard. Or so she thinks. Because all he's doing is riling her up and lying to her. We end up learning, this is like a big twist here, that his real name is Harold Fisher. When he was a kid, he was born on the same hour, same day as these other superhero kids. But his mother didn't get pregnant in one night. She was pregnant for 9 months like anybody else. But he was convinced and obsessed with the idea that maybe he has superpowers. Maybe he has the ability to be part of this gang. He even at one point tries to approach the kids, and Sir Reginald Hargreaves just brutally is like, you are nobody, you're not special, get off my property. And he's humiliated. He already has a shitty, abusive, alcoholic dad who clearly blames his existence and is mad at him because, unfortunately, his mother died during childbirth when she had him. And so he kills his dad, spends 12 years in prison, but when he gets out, he has this whole little shrine of like melted faces and scratched out eyes of all the other kids because he feels like he's personally pissed at them and blames them for his life. So great psychotic little character. But what's even better is he goes to stalk them on the first day that they're all meeting and the whole death thing happens. He must have gotten out of prison recently, honestly. And by pure coincidence, Klaus gets rid of some special things in a box that he then sells the box for money for drug money. In this special box is a red book that says HR for RH, Reginald Hargreaves. And in there are really old special notes. And he uses those special notes to manipulate, because he already knows number 7 is more special than she realizes. And this is when we're going to go into the whole, like, what Vanya's powers are and what they mean and the big ending and all this jazz. Because I'm sure with all this information I'm telling you, like it was for me when I was watching the TV series, you lose yourself in all these mini dramas and you're aware there's the apocalypse, but you're kind of not fully aware of how it's all going to beautifully tie together. So before we go into Vanya, I'm going to talk about number 5's true history. Yeah, true history. So he didn't say everything exactly. He likes to keep a lot of things up his sleeve. Not even because he's being manipulated, but he just don't fucking have time to tell you. He doesn't, unless you're going to help him and he needs to give you what information's important, that's all he cares about. He's almost like his dad a little bit in this way, but he definitely has way more feelings and concern. I mean, everything he's doing is motivated by the death of his siblings he knows is imminent. So, he gets in a fight with his dad. He goes to the future. He's stuck there. He stays there till he's like 58 with his mannequin bride Dolores and all his mathematical, transcriptions. One day, in the middle of the apocalypse where no one exists, comes a perfectly clean, pristine woman. Looks like she's something out of the 50s. She's got great blonde, perfect platinum hair, and she approaches him and says, I work for the commission. Basically, it turns out there is an organization that exists, you could say, on a parallel dimension wherever they work, but they control time and anomalies and things like that. The only thing that they're supposed to do is make sure that everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. So if anything gets in the way, they need to get rid of those people. A.k.a. the wonderful side plot between Cha-Cha and Hazel. By the way, Hazel is actually Cameron Britton, who was played Ed Crumpton, from the serial killer from Mindhunter. So if you recognize him from that, that's what he's from. I don't know if you can tell the embellishment of his voice is like pretty still similar. Loved Cha-Cha and Hazel. They were really awesome. Loved seeing them fight. Loved their interactions with each other. Great. But we'll get into kind of how number 5 almost became a Harold and or Cha-Cha and Hazel. So she explains that they've been watching him. They know it's so special. He's able to time skip and stuff like that. And they want to hire him. And the idea is he kind of becomes like a hitman and he has no other choice, to be honest with you, because as far as he's concerned, he's an old man. There's no one else to exist. He's already stretched the possibilities of his mathematical equations. He's still very laser focused on the whole apocalypse thing, but he's like, sure, I'll take this job. So he becomes a hitman like Cha-Cha and Hazel. And basically what they do is they travel through time and they're basically nameless faces. They're not told or explained to. They're just given a name of like, go kill this person. And killing that person will enable certain things to happen. Like they explain at one point that if one person's killed, then the son will take over this butcher business, which he doesn't clean his hands, so that will cause food poisoning of a regular patron who goes into that butcher shop, that will then cause him to be late, which will then cause I think it's the Hindenburg, to have a delayed launch, which will also be closer to a day of electrical discharge in the stormy weather, which then will ignite it to light on fire, that's how it will still happen. So that's basically how they explain it, is like just these pivotal deaths will launch one thing to the next, which I think is interesting. It's purely based on human lives and not just things. But I guess everything else is stagnant except for us. You know what I mean? We're the physical equation of movement and making things happening and interacting. So that makes sense to me. But he explains that the commission's like a real place. In fact, in the current 2019 timeline, he makes a deal with the commission because they understand he's still very much gun for the apocalypse. We get to see what the commission's like. We get to see what's happening. But whether it's 2019 and he's working, he keeps being promoted in the commission because no matter how much he fights against them, they really admire his intelligence and his ability. And he's incredibly intelligent and he honestly is meant for that job. But he works as a hitman for them for a time. But he was only buying his time until he was able to understand and figure out how to send himself back. In fact, we see he was supposed to kill John F. Kennedy. He doesn't. And so when he doesn't, at that exact moment, he figures out how to project himself in a consciously through another body. And he's able to time skip consciously, which then puts him, it was a bit of a mal equation, which caused him to be like a 13-year-old, aka why time's not the most reliable. You can't control everything you're doing. But he was at one time in the apocalypse alone, then he worked for the commission, and then he came back here. And that's why the commission kind of pops up occasionally. And they're actually, like, honestly, you think they would be the lead enemy or fighting towards, they're the cause of the apocalypse, but no. They just know the apocalypse. By the way, I love that all Apocalypse Matters are done by this really sweet girl named Dot. I love her. She's like, hi, I'm in charge of the apocalypse. But their only goal is to be a cog in a machine, to make sure it happens because that's how time works. And they understand you don't want to fuck with time or you can fuck with everything else. So no, they do not cause the apocalypse. They're just there to make sure it happens. So this is when we're going to get to whole Vanya's powers and everything. At one point, it's revealed that in this whole apocalypse thing, that Harold Fisher is the person to protect. So what do they need to do? Learning from his, thing in the commission, we need to kill Harold Fisher. And Harold Fisher is important in some way. So it's an even bigger deal and a crazy, coincidence that Vanya's with the very dangerous guy who had murdered his dad, but more importantly, is in charge of all this stuff. Now, Allison, before she even knows this, tries to run off and find Vanya, who's trying to learn about her powers and ability with Harold Fisher out in the woods, and tries to warn her sister. By the way, this is just like a little minor in-between conversational point, but I was so fucking... This is like another thing that makes me go, I hate you, Luther. At some point, when he goes to confront his brother number 5, he keeps dumbly being like, well, isn't there something else we could do? It's like, yeah, bitch, he's been trying for decades to fix this one thing, you idiot. But he wants to kill just some random guy because he figures in his equation that will help with the whole apocalypse. And Luther's like, you can't hurt just some random guy. I'm a good guy. No, you're as dumb as the fucking monkey outfit you're in. But keep in mind, I think monkeys are way smarter than Luther, to be honest with you. It's like he's strong and that's about it. I hate Luther because he almost kills Dolores so that his brother will drop this particular gun. It's like not like his brother can't get another gun to kill this random guy. Because I'm like, dude, I know killing an innocent person is fucked up. The commission's fucked up for doing that. But the reality is the apocalypse is going to happen. I couldn't agree with number 5 more. The life of one for the life of billions. I still agree, murder's wrong, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, Luther, do you have another situation? Do you have an idea? No, you just sit around going, no. You don't have any other better ideas, so you're useless. Get out of my way. But we end up learning that Harold Fisher's the problem. So now random gardener doesn't have to get killed. And unfortunately, when Allison goes, at this point, Leonard and her are having all fucked up problems. His personality's coming out more. He's getting more vicious. He's getting more, he's having trouble hiding his more psychotic personality. We learn that he even hired guys to beat him up. He didn't care if they got hurt in Vanya's powerful wake, just to ignite her powers more. At one point, he, locks her in the house where she's terrified and has bad memories, and we get a whole background story on her. Oh, by the way, remember I mentioned the eye in the beginning? It's such a great reveal. The whole series, you're thinking, who has the eye? Who has the eye? Because when number 5 saw his siblings dead, Luther had in his hand an eye that he assumed plucked from the killer. Well, it turns out that when Vanya goes to protect Leonard when they're on their little, vacation out in the country, he ends up getting his eye basically tranquilized because of her powers. And that then he would most likely in the future get a replaceable eye. So it's true, the eye did belong to him, but in this timeline, he didn't end up getting one. So Vanya's powers explained before we go into kind of the avalanche of the ending. Vanya has the ability to take kind of vibrations and sounds and amplify them. And it becomes this infinite, uncontrollable power because she has trouble focusing it on one particular thing. It's just too much because once she creates, so let's say she hears trees moving, the wind, and they're rustling the leaves. She can amplify that, which then causes more things to move and create more sound, which then creates more vibrations to use with. I would argue if she was deaf, she could still do it. She doesn't need to hear anything. She just can work with it. It's like an energy flow. And it kind of becomes this unbridled power source when she can just amplify vibrations that just continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. You can understand how powerful this is. We learned that her dad knew about this all along. He tried using it on her, helping her cue her power at a very young age. But what ended up happening is he realized that it was too dangerous, too uncontrollable, and it would be better if he isolated her in this tank for a temporary time. And then he had his sister, this is so fucked up, Allison say, I heard a rumor you were ordinary. This is what makes her completely forget that she ever has powers, and honestly all of them forget. But Allison at the time didn't know that she even had any powers because she was being trained in private and didn't understand why that her dad wanted her to say, I heard you were ordinary. She just did it because she was like 4 at the time. She didn't know. She felt guilty about it even then because she loved her sister. But, she forgot about it and time went on. And then everyone believed this rumor. It's true. Even herself. And Vanya, when is confronted by Allison, Allison fully admits this, is devastated and sorry about it, but it isn't enough for her to say sorry. At this point, Vanya's raged. She's like, you're just mad and afraid that I have powers, that you are not special anymore. And I wonder if there is a little bit of that. But honestly, she did come to talk to her sister to genuinely give a shit and be like, Harold's not who he seems, blah, 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 blah. She ends up accidentally slicing her sister's throat out of just pure upsetness and anger. And she's devastated as soon as this happens, but Harold rushes her off. And it's so gross when she's in the, sorry, I just burned. She's in the shower or in the bathtub and he's wiping the blood off her hands. And she's so upset and wrecked by this. And he's just being like, yeah, she deserved it. But at this point, honestly, Vanya's too in grief to realize the red flag. She's just gone. She's so devastated. Out of all the siblings, she loves her sister. So they are able to successfully protect Vanya, but Vanya is unable to say, I heard a rumor. By the way, that's why Vanya attacked her, because Allison was going to say, I heard a rumor to prevent her from hurting herself and becoming like a big deal. And that would have been devastating if she said something like, I heard a rumor you were ordinary, or something fucked up like that again. That's just so fucked up. So Vanya eventually does find out Harold has been manipulating her, and she's pissed by this, and she ends up murdering him. So don't worry, Harold's out of the way. And that's a huge problem for them, because they're like, oh, I guess Harold's dead. We don't know where Vanya is, but the apocalypse is saved. But they end up realizing, and they end up putting it all together, that Vanya is a huge liability. But they make it so much worse. But not they. Motherfucking Luther. Oh my god. Okay, so this is the big thing that trips it. She goes to the house and she says to him, I'm so sorry it was an accident. I do think he believes her, but he squeezes her to the point, and he gets to see a bit of the effect of her powers of her shaking the house and stuff. And he's surprised too, because they've all been comfortable with the idea of seeing Vanya as weak, which is like, what does that say about you guys? But they put her in the same isolation tank that she experienced as a child. You realize she has great claustrophobia, which is why it was so fucked up of Harold or Leonard to lock her in the house and put her in a forced containment to then start tapping into her potential, which she interestingly likes to use through a violin. I thought that was a great little beautiful kind of, like I said, everything kind of coming in together, pulling in together. As soon as the other siblings see that Luther put her in this tank, everyone's in disagreement. And this is what makes the rest of the family great, because a lot of them say a lot of mean things to her, and she just deals with it and handles it really classy, in my opinion, and is very kind and forgiving. But they're very rude to her, and it's unacceptable how quick they are to just like think, you're ordinary, get out of here, you're a liability, or think the worst. But in this situation, and I don't think it's purely because she had powers, but because they do genuinely love her, they are mad at Luther. Allison is pissed. She writes on a notebook being like, it was my fault she attacked me. It was my fault. She has a right to be upset. Meanwhile, Vanya, Ellen Page, is just hitting against the cage rapidly, hitting it so hard. You feel so bad for her. I loved what Klaus said. Klaus is like, how do you think she feels? She's probably terrified with these new powers. We're making it worse by putting her in there. We need to be there for her. Even number 5, who's been cold up to this point, everyone, Diego, everyone's like, take our sister out of there. What the fuck are you doing? She's our sister, and it doesn't matter if she seems dangerous. She needs help. That would be the best way to help her. And they're not even mad at her because of the Allison thing. They get it. It's scary having all these abilities and trying not to hurt everyone around you. So anyways, this ends up, because Luther's like, no, I'm doing the right thing. Again, very Jack from Lost, if you're a Lost fan, just fucking things up, making it worse because you're the only one with the decision. And honestly, honey, you're not giving a better answer other than, like, you're just locking it away. Well, why? How's that going to work? Did you think of all the possibilities of what would happen? Like, there's not a lot of reasoning or love from his end, honestly. And it's like, did he ever love Vanya? Fuck him. So, Vanya ends up flipping kind of quickly. It kind of feels, considering how good the pacing is throughout the series, this feels kind of very fast and kind of weird, but I will let it go and accept it because it makes sense up till now that she would just finally be done with it. Every time she's tried to bond with her sister just turns on her and thinks the worst of her. Just the way, especially considering her big thing is she's been seen as ordinary and special and excluded from everything. And even her sister Allison thinks it's gross that they've excluded her all this time. But then what does she do? She goes about excluding them. The others speak very ill of her at times and are rude to her and push her aside and aren't concerned with how she feels, ever. It's fucked up over and over and over again. And now, when worst comes to shove, and she truly is a victim being put in a situation, she's backed into a corner and she just kind of has an emotional snap. She bonds with the parts of herself she's forgotten as a child. The part of her, at one time, by the way, when she was a little kid, she just was okay with murdering all her nannies. It was pretty fucking dark. So she did have a dark side to her that they don't really go into, but that was there before she experiences Grace, her mom or nanny that's a robot she can't murder. But also the young part of her that was like very fearful and scared, and they all kind of merge with her, and she uses her powers to get out. Now, this is what was spoiled for me when she becomes the white violinist, and I love how she becomes the white violinist. She's got these crazy blue contacts and crazy pale skin. And we see it, by the way, I loved thinking of the idea of when she shows up to the concert of everyone going, nice subtle look, Vanya, with her like crazy blue eyes, so dramatically different than her regular brown eyes. But we see her walk through the house, destroy the Umbrella Academy, having memories, seeing constantly excluded, seen as someone who was like a pain or a hassle just for living. I mean, it's just so fucked up. And she just destroys the academy before she leaves to put on a badass suit and grab her violin to go head to her first chair position at the concert. This is when number 5 has the epiphany. When he saw the place all destroyed and his siblings all killed within there, he thought, well, that was part of the apocalypse. But he realizes maybe the building was killed before the apocalypse. Vanya, her powers, how powerful she is, she's clearly on some sort of a rampage. She's it. She's the apocalypse. Harold Fisher was associated with her and probably is the one who kind of like that's why Harold Fisher was initially when it was given orders to like later hitmen, it was to protect him, because him fostering her craft is what causes her to be angry and tapped with her powers and kind of out of control and create the apocalypse. We get this great beautiful ending scene where she's playing the violin. She's entranced. She's scaring everybody. It's beautiful music, beautiful violin music. A great soundtrack in general, but beautiful violin music as her eyes are glowing light blue. And as she plays, she literally like sucks the color out of her suit and becomes all white violin. Her vibrations have hit another level. Like in this thing, we constantly get to see everybody's like potential and powers. By the way, this is like totally off candor, but I just wanted to say I loved Klaus and Dave and their relationship. I felt more chemistry with them though in the short time they got to be with each other than just Allison and Luther in general. Not because of bad acting, but I don't know, just really great job. I just didn't like Allison and Luther as a couple, but I really loved Klaus and his boyfriend, and I even loved the mannequin and number 5, but they approached the situation all wrong. Allison is like, listen, I'm going to go talk to her, but you need to leave me alone. She approaches her, smiling, warm, and as Vanya is playing the violin, she smiles at her. It seems like there's a sense of connection. It doesn't seem like Vanya is ready to go on a killing spree with an apocalypse at all. Not at all. She just seems passionate in the moment, happy to see her sister supporting her and accepting her for her abilities and powers. And then Luther fucks it up because he uses his supposed love of his life as a distraction so they can all attack her from multiple sides. And when they try to do this, they try to attack her, she gets pissed. It gets a lot worse. And she's even Allison's like, are you fucking kidding me? Look, did that work out the first time? That's what caused all of this, Luther. That's the thing. Luther caused all of this. For the man who thinks he's such a good guy, he can't do anything wrong, he does everything wrong. He is not likable. So he ends up, when they go to attack her all at once, all the boys, by the way, this is another side note I want to mention. I loved that we end up getting a little bit of a deeper insight into Klaus's potential powers because he was never sober enough to explore them. He's able to transcend fully to another life, like a heaven, the afterlife, whatever you want to think of it as. He's able to conjure the dead, and this is a big one because he always has a connection with Ben, and Ben has superpowers of his own. He's able to give Ben enough tangibility in the real world so Ben can use his superpowers as a ghost. I mean, so fucking cool to see all the siblings staring at their dead sibling and feeling like emotionally like, oh my god. I also loved when a big moment was people, they all had to make a decision. They even asked Ben as a ghost like if he was cool with that. I loved that. So just, I can't wait for them to tap more into that into the next season. I just want to say that. Going back to what we were saying, the boys go up and attack her, and she's able to suspend them in air. She looks like she's dissolving their skin or something. It's crazy because we don't really fully know, because like when you get into powers, you can really have your powers extended if you can conceptually understand what you can manipulate and go even further to. So any power has a lot of deeper potential to it, aka Klaus and his like whole like death and being able to make Ben a tangible ghost form. And Allison has to hold a gun to the back of her sister's head, who's fully entranced, totally in another world. But obviously she still can't kill her sister, but she makes the best decision possible. She shoots the gun, but right next to Vanya's ear. This then causes Vanya to be distracted enough that she lets her brothers go, and like all of her power shoots out of her, and she falls back, and the power shoots up above her and hits the moon. It hits the moon, and the moon falls apart. I was like, quick question. Can the Earth exist without the moon? I know we need the sun, but we need the moon too, right? I would love, if anyone wants to tweet me or email me, please let me know what the situation is with the moon. But as soon as I saw it falling apart, I was like, we need a moon, right? But they are able to catch their sister, hold her, and be very thankful that they're alive, she's alive. They're really happy with how it goes. But when they see the moon falling apart, the moon's hitting the Earth. This is what happens. It's still going to happen. The apocalypse is truly still, in the end, inevitable. And they decide they have to make a decision quick. Because how the season finale ends is the apocalypse still fucking happens. I mean, like, I cannot wait for season 2 because they left it with, like, the world ended. It for sure ended. And in this world, they realize, okay, number 5 can skip time, so we'll have to go to the future again. He still can't maneuver very well going back and forth in time, but he can at least move forward, and he's going to try to take all of them. And they're like, what about Vanya? And they're like, and even number 5 himself suggests, let's take her with us and we can help fix her. So they know that this apocalypse is inevitable, but maybe they can find some way to get around it or deal with it or whatever, but they are not skipping out on Vanya. They still love her. They still feel close to her. And I'm relieved to know in the end, like, that love was real. That was actually important to me to see that they don't want to throw her away like tissue paper. Luther, I'm just saying, Luther, she's gonna fucking wake up and remember that. I hope she doesn't have some stupid, like, it's okay. I hope she's like, I'm gonna vibrate you to death. Ew, I didn't mean it that way. So, okay. I just wanted to add last 2 things. One, an interesting perspective on Ellen Page herself and Vanya. And last, how I think it could have been fixed. Okay. So, Ellen Page in real life she infamously went on I think it was the Colbert show or whatever, the Stephen Colbert late night show or whatever, and she gave a very passionate speech about people who are alienated, kind of the ramifications of we put up these laws and prevent people from being able to be themselves, especially when it comes to gay rights. But I would argue bullying, anything. If you are victimized and put in a position, it's she was coming more in real life from a perspective of like, it's so sad, people should not like die from situations that can be easily fixed. This should not be a problem, but it's having huge ramifications. But I would argue she is ironically playing the same character that she's fighting for, which is if you bully and isolate someone enough over a long enough time period, you can create you can create a villain. I mean, and then this is where we going to the next point, how you can fix it. Could no one treat her nicely? I understand her powers were just too amplified. I would argue they should have tried a little fucking harder. I mean, like, a little bit of glass hit underneath his eye, and the dad was just like, I'm out, close up shop, we're done here. And I think that they could have at least tried harder with her abilities. But if they were so crazy and bad, and you needed to medicate her and lie to her and make her forget about her powers, okay, whatever. But there's no reason how she shouldn't have been made to feel special for her own abilities fostered. I mean, the mom was loving and tried that, but it was totally okay that there was no love or appreciation and there was lots of isolation. I mean, she could have been involved a lot more. He could have defended her a lot more. There could have been some sort of fostering and togetherness because without trying, they still felt together and close to her. But because there was a constant, like, kind of put into their head of, like, powers are more important than anything else. We are our own thing and you're separate. That's what caused all the fights. That I feel like Allison wouldn't have had these opinions or treated her this way with that back and forth because in her heart she felt close to her sister, and that includes everyone else. So I just had like a really like I don't even think that's shitty writing. I think that's just how it went. That's how the guy was. That makes sense. Totally think I'm glad it worked out that way. But on like a level, if I could talk to Sir Reginald, I'd be like, Sir Reginald, I can see the future. And it don't look good for you, so you better fucking learn to be nice. Come on, dude. Oh, this is a big reveal. They don't express this well enough, but again, this is a little bit of me peeking into the comic books. You just kind of see that there's rockets and that his love dies and his love played the violin, and that's why it's kind of sweet and special. He gave number 7 the violin, even though he should have fucking told her. She had no idea. And because she didn't know, that was like a really nice gift that he gave her, the violin of someone very important to him. So he did clearly care for Vanya. I thought it was like fucked up he didn't do it. But we learned that he kind of always knew about the apocalypse going to happen. And because he knew about the apocalypse that was going to happen, he was actually really preparing them for being able to fight against it all this time. It wasn't about being superheroes and these trivial matters. It was about the apocalypse. In fact, we learned his death was sketchy. He killed himself on purpose to bring them together. That's how much this meant to him. And the biggest reveal of all is that Daddy Dearest is a motherfucking alien. Now, they don't say that outright, but the thing is, he's a motherfucking alien. He really is. And you just see kind of some rockets and a different alien planet type of looking thing, but they don't really spell it out enough, so you're left kind of confused. But in the comic books, he's an alien. He was wearing a human skin so that the children obviously weren't afraid of him, and he was able to just like blend in there, but he's an alien. But this is what's so great about season 2. We see when they go to the future as kids, they are all then 13-year-old versions of themselves in going into the future. First of all, we better get our original actors back, because no offense to the kid actors, but the kid actors besides Aidan sucked balls. Sorry little kids. You just didn't do it for me. So I hope they go back to their adult versions of themselves. But I really liked that kind of, how do I express this? What's it called? I liked that we're left going, okay, the apocalypse happened. Now what? How are they going to fix this? Because they seem like they're okay with the apocalypse happening because they understand it's inevitable and it's just going to happen. What about the commission? That lady was killed. I assume the commission's still existing. Are they going to be hunting for them? What about Vanya? What's the relationship with Vanya? How's her abilities going to change or get better or worse? I did like the major change, by the way, in the comic book. Apparently, there's some like orchestra that they believe if they control sound, there's like a particular song they can play that can like cause the apocalypse, and they try to get Vanya to join, and that's how she becomes the white violinist. I like that they just changed it of her own emotional grief, and it was more of like an accident type thing. That makes more sense for the plot line for me. And then the big one is like, so their dad's an alien, right? What happened to his planet? People were leaving that planet. Why? Why was his, girl dying? Was she just dying from natural causes? Why did he become so drawn to these children and know about the apocalypse? I mean, these mothers got pregnant overnight and then had babies. Maybe that is the result of some sort of alien thing they had implanted, and he was meant to kind of foster all of them. So you see what I'm saying? It's left with a lot of interesting things to go off of. I really hope they do a good job and continue to give it this much well done gusto and amazing acting and lots of powers and fun. And I mean, I cannot get enough of number 5's old man snarkiness. So funny. I want to see Hazel and that woman he ran away with. I want to see everybody. So it's really, really an amazing series. I wouldn't normally go on this long if it wasn't, but there is that much to talk about, to be honest with you. I mean, on the amount of details I can go in just talking about Klaus alone, this is the shortest I can make it. I could easily talk about this show for another 3 hours if you want me to, but I'm going to cut it off here for now. I'm so curious to know, do you think it could have been prevented with Vanya and she could have had a different life in it? Or do you think it was just inevitable? They were going to view her that way because her powers were suppressed? Should she have been suppressed? I just want to know your opinion and have a conversation with you guys because I love talking about this shit. Guys, share this, talk about it, tweet me, follow me, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. Tell a good friend so they can be friends with me. I love you guys. Talk to you in the next episode.